Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mobile App Academy. This is our live building series where we show you how to build and configure mobile apps on the Now platform. My name is David Ha, and I'm an outbound product manager here at ServiceNow, and I'll be your host for today's session. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome to the session. We have product experts here to provide guidance, best practices, and answer any questions that do come up along the way. And we do host these academies every 2 weeks at 10 a.m. Pacific, in which our recordings are posted to YouTube on the ServiceNow Now community channel. But in case you aren't familiar, just want to point out a few resources that we have available. If you're new to mobile, we recommend that you check out some of our self-enablement resources, which you can find on our community site, such as the Essential Training blog and mobile FAQs. But we do have other resources such as our labs and mobile trainings on Now Learning, and the playlist to all of our previous app academies as well, which you can find sessions like Mobile Agent Quick Start Guides, Getting Started with Now Mobile, and many, many more. But with that said, let's get started with today's topic, in which we further explore getting started with Mobile App Builder. This is our fourth session into Mobile App Builder, and today we're going to be deep diving into how you can build action functions using the App Builder. So how do I do things like enable actions for my users so that they can change something in the database, such as updating a record or creating a new record. Okay. And just to quickly review our schedule for today, we'll start off with a quick overview on Mobile App Builder or on action functions, and then we'll jump into the exercise and then wrap up with some Q&A. But if you aren't already familiar, mobile functions are what we use to define what users can perform inside of their ServiceNow mobile apps. In order for a user to execute any action on mobile, whether it's updating a field, creating a new record, or any CRUD-related operation, then the system admin will have to configure that very specific action function for the user to do so, right? So this is very different than Portal. This is different than just accessing web through a mobile device. This is actually being specific about which native actions you want enabled for your users, right? We built mobile with the intention of building an optimal mobile-first experience. And what that means is not giving them complete access to the entire instance, but really defining what is it that they really need to do on mobile and building out those specific use cases, right? So what are those 3 to 5 most important actions that a new user would actually need on their mobile screen, and configuring those out for them. And by creating this optimal mobile experience for users, they'll actually want to use your app and access their ServiceNow records, which will improve your app engagement, as well as user retention over time. And there are 3 main types of functions that you can configure for your end users. They are write back actions, navigations, and smart buttons. Smart buttons are what we covered last week. We typically use those to interact with the native applications of your mobile device, such as phone, map, email, or URL. And you can create smart buttons where, if the user taps on the location field of a record, then it can pull up the Apple Maps or Google Maps and navigate you to that destination. You can also have it navigate to URLs. So if you wanted to open up the LinkedIn website of a user, you would be able to do so. Or maybe you want it to open up a corporate website using Safari. That's also possible. Write back actions are the more common types of actions, right? It's probably the main use case when you're accessing your ServiceNow mobile app. It's anytime that you, excuse me, they are used anytime that you want to make changes to records or instances, right? So things like creating a new task, updating a task, reassigning tasks to yourself, and so forth. Navigation functions, in which we'll cover in the next App Academy, are what we use to navigate between screens. And most commonly, they're used to navigate users with record context. And what that means is that, where that user ends up landing will depend on the information of the record that you're on. To give an example, a user can open up an instance, and if they want to pull up more information on the caller of that instance, you can navigate to the profile screen that pulls up the details on that caller. So that's just one example. Okay, but we'll dive into the details on that in the next academy. Because today's session, we're going to focus on write back functions, since this is the most common form on how users perform actions, such as creating or updating. And this is, let's see, I think I want to provide some context in case you're a legacy mobile app user. Maybe you're familiar with things like item parameters and UI parameters. But when we introduced Roam, which was a few releases back, you might have noticed that we introduced some new features that might have changed the way that you build your write back actions. For those who were already familiar with building mobile, you might have been using item parameters and UI parameters, which were essentially inputs that were used to build a write back action. Back in between Madrid all the way to Rome, if you wanted to build an action, you would create an action that would use item parameters and UI parameters, and you would map them together, like short description or priority. You would map the item parameter, UI parameter, and that was your method of creating write back actions. But as we moved into Rome, we needed a better ability to create them more, to allow them to be a bit more dynamic, and allowed us to enhance that action performing experience for users. And so we introduced a new feature called input form screens. And these are basically the new method of building your actions. And we would recommend that if you're still using item parameters and UI parameters, no harm, no foul. But if you want to take advantage of the latest features and enhancements, we definitely recommend that you migrate over to input form screens. Okay. Now, input form screens basically provides a streamlined experience for your users to input in their data. It can do everything that the old action can do, but much more. So you can do things like organize your inputs by different sections of information. You can paginate inputs into multiple pages so that your users aren't just presented a long list of fields that they have to fill out on a single screen. You have a lot more flexibility, and you can do things like customize the headers of those input form screens. You can customize the labels of your buttons. You can customize how those inputs appear on your screen. There's just a lot more flexibility, and we're also unlocking many more new use cases that couldn't be done before, such as autofilling variables using script. We have a video on that on Essential Training. We also support multiple attachments as inputs, and you can also do things like field value calculations. So it's just a much more dynamic and robust method of creating write back actions with this. And so to jump into today's use case, I'm going to show you how you can create a new write back action from scratch, which we'll use an input form screen. Okay. This will basically teach you the fundamentals so that you can create your own action from scratch anywhere within your own apps. And before we get started, let me go ahead and promote a few people to panelist so that they can help me with some Q&A while we get started. Okay, so let me go ahead and share a new screen now. And then we can get started. Okay, so I think you should be able to see my screen at this point. Okay. So to get started, we're going to first open up Mobile App Builder. You can see on my mobile device, I currently have the out-of-the-box field service mobile app pulled up. The only thing that I did to the out-of-the-box experience was we created this custom list screen a few sessions back, and I've kind of just left it there. But what we want to do in today's session is, out of the box, I have my tasks that are assigned to me. What if I wanted to create a new action that allows me to create new work order task? And maybe I want to put it up in this top menu function here. How would I go about doing that? So let's go ahead and launch into Mobile App Builder and create a new function. And we are going to dive into the field service mobile scope. Okay. And then from the menu, we'll go ahead and jump into functions and create a new function. And then let's go and call this create work order task. And just so that it's easier for me to find later. Well, let's call this Mobile App Academy. Okay, the type is going to be an action item. The context, this is going to be important here. If since we're creating new records, it doesn't have record context to any record, and so the context will be global because these are completely new records. Okay. If you leave it on record, it won't work. So we'll set that to global, and then we're going to create a new action item here. Okay. And we'll call this create work order task. Again, we're going to change the type. You can see that there's 4 different types here for new, update, delete, script. We want new, since we're creating new records. And this will create a new record in the work order task table. And then it's going to ask you what field values do you want your user to fill in, right? So when you create a new work order task, what are those fields that you want them to input before that task gets generated? So I think we're going to want the priority field. We're also going to want, a short description. What is that task related to? And then we're also going to need to assign it to someone, right? So let's do assignment group and assign to. Okay. So I do want to mention that each one of these fields, it's a different type of field. I think, the assigned to fields are definitely reference type of fields. And so it's going to need some extra configuration, which I'll show you. The priority, it's likely going to be a choice list, since I think there's 5 different priorities for the work order task. And then short description, it's I think it's just a string field. And so you can just fill in whatever you want. Okay. Now we're not quite done with this action yet. We need to now figure out, how are these inputs going to be defined, right? And so we're going to create an input form screen to define what the user can do with these field values. And so we'll call this creates work order task. And look how for input form screens, if you're familiar with the old actions, you didn't have these type of options like being able to customize the header card, changing what the buttons say. It doesn't have to always just say submit, next, and previous. If you want to customize that, you have the ability to. Info form page display. So previously, you would have, if you built a write back action with 20 plus inputs, it would all appear on a single screen. But if you wanted a more streamlined experience, let's say you're reserving, creating a reservation for a conference room, maybe it makes sense to kind of paginate some of these inputs so that the more similar inputs are on one page. And if it's asking for different types of information, you have them navigate to the next page to fill out, as opposed to kind of just, scrolling down a whole list of inputs. So you just have a bit more flexibility in doing that, right? So I'm going to have to create an input for each one of those field values that I picked. So let's go ahead and create an input for a priority. I can set the placeholder. I'll leave that blank. The type is going to be choice. I think there's 5 values on that, the column for priority. And so we'll have the user select from one of the 5. You can make it a mandatory type of field. You can have it read only. Those don't make sense here. I could make it mandatory if I want. So let's go and set that to true. And then it's going to ask for an input attribute. These input attributes, I would recommend that you always are referencing the product docs. So when you're configuring new inputs, I would look up ServiceNow, mobile. Actually, you can just do ServiceNow input form screen. Click on this first link here. Specifically for choice type inputs, you're going to need specific types of attributes to make it work. And so if we scroll down here and look up input form screen attributes for inputs, and you can see all the different types of attributes here. Barcode, Boolean, choice. So let's see. It's telling me for choice that these are all the different types of attributes that I can use. The two that are required are these two here. You're going to need the table attribute and the field attribute in order for it to work as a baseline. So I'm going to first select table and select the work order task table. And I'm going to go back into that priority input and create the second attribute for a field. And then we'll save. So now at this point, it understands that this input for a priority is mapped to the work order task table and that it's a choice type of input, okay? At this point, this input will work for my action. I have a couple other attributes that I can use, but these are optional. You can see that in the beginning of the description, it says optional. Okay. And if you want to learn any more about attributes for specific field types, I recommend checking out the product docs. Let's go and create our other three inputs. So let's go back into my input form screen and create short description. Okay, I believe, yes, this input type is string so that the user can just type in whatever they want. And I believe for string types, it doesn't need any attribute whatsoever. This is the easiest one to configure. If I scroll down to string. Yeah, so these are all optional inputs here. You can have a placeholder, you can set conditions, you can have it searchable if you want. I'm going to ignore all of these and just leave it as a basic short description. We'll save that. Let's create our last two inputs for assignment group. Assignment group, so that we can assign this to someone. And this will be reference. And then we will save. Okay. We're going to fill out the input attributes. And then let's go ahead and search for reference here. Reference inputs. Okay, perfect. So all three of these attributes are required fields. The source table is just, the work order task table. The source field name is going to be that assignment group. This target table here is, since the field that you're using is a reference qualifier, it's asking which table is that reference qualifying. What is the target table for that? So let me go and show you what that means. I'm going to need to look up in my table definitions. Let's look up table. Table under system definitions. I'm going to look up the work order task table. And then search for assignment group column. Okay, so here's my assignment group. We'll open up this entry. And you can see that this is a reference type of field. And under the reference specification tab, you can see that this is referencing the group table. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the correct scope, and then I'm going to look up what is this group table actually called. What is the actual name? And the name of it is sys user group. Okay, so that's what I'm going to fill out for my target table in order for this input to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in source table, which is just work order task. And if you're wondering, the order of these attributes don't matter. So I can fill them in any order that I want. Let's go ahead and create the field, source field name. For assignment group. And then we'll save it. And then lastly, the third input that we're going to need is target table. And I believe the table is called groups, which is under sys user group. Okay, we'll save that. Now, I think I have one last input that I need to create this for, which is assigned to. So let's scroll down to inputs and create our last input for assigned to. And I believe this is also reference type. We'll save. And then it's going to need the same 3 attributes, except this target table is going to be different. So I'm going to go back to my table dictionary just to confirm that. Let's check which table this is referencing. So here's my assigned to column. Let's jump into this. And again, yes, this is a simple type of reference qualifier in which it's pointing to the user table. So sys user. Okay. So let's go ahead and fill out the source table again, which is work order task. Oops, order task. We'll map it to the assigned to field. And then lastly, let's map that target table, which is sys user. Okay, so now at this point, I have my 4 inputs all done. I'm not quite done yet. There is one last step that I need to remember. I need to go into my action item, and the 4 field values that I selected earlier, I now need to map them to my 4 inputs. These are saying, what do I want to do to these field values? For priority, I want to give my user the ability to pick from 5 field choices, right? For short description is going to be a string type, and they can fill in whatever they want. The assignment group is a reference, so it will just pull up a list of all the values that are available. Assignment group, and then we'll also map the assigned to. Okay. Since these are reference types, if you select, NorCal technicians, for example, then the assigned to, which follows from the assignment group, will only show you the relevant results. So instead of showing, 100 values of all the listed values possible on this table, it will only show you the reference type, which might be just 4 values that lives under NorCal technicians. Okay. Now I'm going to save this. At this point, the last step is I just have to associate this action and put it where I want in this mobile app. Now, I want to set some precedent that this action will not work yet. And I'll show you exactly why, but I want to pull up the error message to show you that this will help point you and guide you to understand why your action might not work. If there's missing inputs, or maybe there's something that you might have skipped, a step that you might have skipped. So let's go ahead and just associate this action, and I'll show you what error message you'll see from this. I have my function done. So let's go ahead and put this in the My Task list screen. If I tap on See All, let's say I want to put it in the top menu function here so that the user can just create a new task. So under Screens, we're going to look up My Task. And then directly from this list screen, I can just scroll down and then put it under the top menu function. We'll call this create work order task. This display for this can just be create work or just keep it short. Create task. And then I think that's the only required field. Oh, and then select the function that we just created, which we called. I think my instance is lagging a little bit, so we'll just give this a second to load. There we go. So create work order task for mobile app cat. And then we'll save. So at this point, this function should display, even though it might not quite work. If you associate it in a place that is supported, you should at least be able to see the button. So let's go ahead and refresh this. And now you can see that there's now this ellipsis that I can actually tap on, which allows me to create a new. Oops, can you see it? It's hiding underneath. There you go. Create task. So you can see that you might be wondering, why do I only see one input? And the reason for that is because I set to default. You go back to create work order task. If I go to my input form screen, this is the input form screen behavior. If I scroll down on input form screens, you can see that for input form screen display, by default, I selected the individual page for each input. And so I'm going to have to tap on each on next to be able to navigate between each input or go previous. Okay. And you can have multiple inputs on each one of these pages, but right now I have 4 pages for 4 different inputs. If I want it all on a single page, then I would just select on custom page and be able to configure that. Okay, but we'll leave that as is for now. You might be wondering, how do I set the order of these inputs? This kind of all seems random at the moment. I think I forgot to set an order. I think the order that makes the most sense here would be, let's set short description as first. So we'll go ahead and click on the short description input and then set the order to 10 and save that. And then let's go ahead and make priority the next order. We'll set that to 20. And then we'll have the assigned to and assignment group as the last order. I think in the right order, it goes assignment group, and then it goes assigned to. On record, order 30. And then lastly, order 40. Okay, so now if I do a refresh out of this, I think I'll actually even do a hard close just for good measure. I should see that input form screen updated. Okay, so now I can see the short description first. So now let's go ahead and actually create a new task here. I'm expecting this to fail, and we'll see exactly why it fails. So, we'll call this test. This will have a high priority. Let's say that I want it to assign it to field service vendors, and then I want to assign it to Able. Now, it failed. If I tap on this view message on the why it failed, it's telling me that there's 2 fields that are missing. If I actually go into the work order task table, work order task, all work order tasks, and I click into one of these records, Give it a second to load. You're going to notice that these are actually required fields. And so this is not allowing me to create a work order task because it requires a parent, which is where for this work order task, which work order does this live under? And then, although I selected the assignment group and assigned to, I forgot the dispatch group. This will actually help determine what type of assignment groups there are available. So I'm going to have to create 2 more inputs for dispatch group and then parent. Okay. So this error message is quite helpful in troubleshooting. So let's go back to my instance. I'm back inside of my function. We'll go back into input form screen and create 2 inputs. We'll create an input first for parents. This parent is going to be a reference type. And then we'll save. And then for the input attributes, we're going to need 3 again. Which is pulling from the work order task table. We'll map it to the parent field on this work order task table. And then lastly, we're going to need a target table, as we mentioned earlier. And to find this target table, I'll have to go back into my table dictionary. Table definitions. Find work order tasks. We'll look up the parent column. And so we see that this table extends from, or it's referencing the task table. Okay. So the value for this will just be task. Save. Okay. We just need one last input to make this action work. We will create the last one, which is dispatch group, which is also a reference type of field. Again, we'll quickly create 3 attributes. Let me go and rush through this. Oh, so if you ever run into this, why aren't my values showing up? It's likely because on your input, you forgot to change the input type. Oh. There we go. Again, I'm just rushing through this to create our last input. This one's for dispatch group. And then lastly, the target table, which I don't know yet. So let's go ahead and find this on our dictionary. Dispatch. And this one is a reference qualifier that points to groups. So sys user groups. Okay, so I'm very close to the finish line. You might think that this is now complete, but just to clean this up a bit, let's make sure that we give these in order so that when the user is filling out these inputs, the order makes sense. This is going to have to live above assignment group. And so we'll actually set the order of this to 30 and then change assignment group to 40. And then change assign to 50. And then parent, I think would make most sense if we set that to first. So we'll go into parent and set the order to 0. Although the best practice, I would recommend always setting the orders in increments of 10. But just to rush through this, I think 0 should still work. But for whatever reason, if you see your orders messed up, just make sure you're using increments of 10. I think this should all work now. Oh no, I skipped one last step. We need to go back into our action item and map our field values to the 6 inputs that we have. Only have 4, so let's map 2 more. We're going to map parents to parent, and then map dispatch group to dispatch group, and then save. I believe at this point, this action should work. So let's go ahead and do a refresh. We'll close out just for good measure. And then go and check on this task. So it's asking me for parent, so that's a good sign. So notice that for parent, there's so many values in this table. It wouldn't make sense for me to scroll through all of this. So what is an attribute that I can kind of take advantage of to kind of create this better experience for my end user? If I go into the docs and you look up reference type, there are extra attributes that you can take advantage of to kind of improve this experience. You have things like multi-select, enable search. I'll likely take advantage of this one right here, because then I can just type in the work order that I want. And then you can do things like search type to control whether you want to do start with or contains. So let's go ahead and just enable this enable search attribute. So to do that, I'll go into my parent input, jump into the correct record, and then add a 4th attribute here for enable search. Enable search. And then the value for this is true. So if I save this and do a refresh, you can now search by the record that you want. So just to speed through this work order task, let's just find one work order really fast. We'll assign it to this one here. So we'll look up work order task 0090010. Okay, and we'll select that one, go next. This will be our test 3. We'll give it a high priority. Dispatch group, let's say California dispatchers. Again, if there's too many values in this table, then you can also enable different attributes to kind of improve that experience. But I'll go and skip that one. This will be for NorCal technicians. And then we'll assign it to me, which I'm logged in as admin. And it says that the agent currently isn't available. So what I would need to do here is if you click into one of these work order tasks, you're going to notice that scheduled is also an important field, just to make sure that the agent is available and whatnot. But just to clear my schedule, and make this work, let's go and go to test. I'm going to delete this one. Okay, I think my schedule should be clear now. Oops. We'll select California dispatchers. NorCal. Assign this to me. Okay. Let's assign it to someone else. Let's assign a table. And there we go. Okay. Normally you would see a success message, but we didn't configure a success message. You can actually do that very easily by going into your is it input form screen? No, action item. No, action function. You can show confirmation messages. So whether it succeeds or fails, you can display that. But if you look into my table of records for work order task, we should see a test 4. And so you can see that this action did work. Okay, so this was a very simplified example. This workflow might not make sense, but I just wanted to show the fundamentals on how you can create new actions from scratch, right? I think what would actually make more sense is if you go into a task, you would navigate to the parent, right? And then from here, I should be able to create work order task, which Field Service Mobile already built out of the box. So I can create a work order task from there. Okay. Let's go ahead and answer some questions now, and then we'll wrap up very shortly. Charity, are there any questions that we want to highlight here?
Yeah, I mean, it might be helpful there's 2 that just got asked in the Q&A that have yet to be answered, but it might be helpful to kind of just review the answered ones as well, because I'm not sure if everyone can see those. And then in the chat, if anyone has questions on mobile publishing, there are some links. Somebody had a question, so there are some links there to the Mobile App Academy on mobile publishing a few months ago, and then the doc site and the Now Learning course. But David, I'll let you look at the Q&A if you want. There's 2 still that have not yet been answered. They're kind of just in general about mobile, not necessarily about the functions. Well, one is. Do you want to take them?
Okay, so we have a couple questions here. Can we add email or any other record function? Oh, my internet connection might be unstable. That's probably why. Okay. There we go. Okay. So any field here you can easily add. We actually covered this in the last academy.
We're a little behind you. Like what you're displaying is a little behind where you're talking. So if you want to give it just a sec, there you go. We're caught up now.
Sweet. If you're asking if you can add any type any fields to this list screen here for the details, yes, that's possible. We actually covered that configuration in the last academy. I'll actually get that video uploaded to YouTube I'll try to get that up by tomorrow. So definitely reference that if you want to take a closer look. Question about mobile filters. If you want to build a simple filter that returns today's tickets to list screens, selecting a date range, is that possible? Any suggestions? We do have product docs on mobile filters. Let's see, mobile filters. So you can see that creating filters for date ranges are actually possible. I highly recommend just checking out the product docs. I'll try to Add this as a topic idea for a future App Academy as well. And then make sure that you're looking at the latest version. Is there a method to build filters without selecting a date range to display today's ticket on the list screen? If this is the current behavior, I don't think there is a way to change the UI on this. If you're asking, can you just fill in, numbers? I don't think that is possible. But Tony, feel free to open up an idea enhancement for the idea portal, and we'll take a closer look. Can you show how to edit a date field on a task using an edit function? We did run out of time for today, but we can definitely do a deeper dive into functions and checking out other inputs. But I do recommend that there are other now learning courses that you can check out. Charity, is there a great function course out there?
A great one. I'm updating the functions course right now, so I would wait just a little bit just to get a more robust functions. There is a functions course out there, but it's pretty light. So for a great one that maybe goes into more of the details on some of these things with the functions, I would wait a little bit. John, if you want to email me directly, then I can send you an email when that course is updated completely. My email is charity, CHARITY .katz, KATZ at servicenow.com. Now on there for all of YouTube. So if you want to send me an email though, I can add you to a list to notify you when that course is updated. I know that that Now Learning, even if you enrolled in the current course, wouldn't notify you as of right now when the course is updated, but it will have labs so that you guys can actually step through kind of some of the stuff that David did today, you would be able to do in the Now Learning courses.
Awesome. It looks like that wraps up all of our questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a couple that were that I answered because I don't know if they can see them. So there was a question about templates to allow configuration and formatting of notifications that appear on the notification list screen, similar to Mobile Card Builder for the incident forms and incident lists. So no, there is not a template to configure the notifications like kind of look and feel like Mobile Card Builder. But when you create the push notifications, you can customize the content that shows up, and that's going to be also what shows up in that notifications list, and also make those actionable. So there is documentation on the doc site on how to do that. And there is a mobile app academy as well on actionable push notifications. So those can help. As far as the Now Learning, we're having a little trouble with push notifications. The labs and stuff are just not working properly due to some stuff with the way that our instances are set up. So that course is currently not published as is currently not updated and published. So that will be one that is added, and as soon as we get that kind of worked out, and then you can again go through and make those customizations and see it working on a test instance. And then another question was regarding the somebody said that this is their first session, and do we need to start with field service mobile app, field service management mobile app? There are and I don't remember off the top of my head how many, but I think there's over a dozen business unit pre-created apps, applications. So like customer service, onboarding, ITSM mobile, those are all available and have pre-configured screens and functions and all of that stuff that's really kind of relevant to that business unit. So there is, for instance, an ITSM mobile agent app that you can get through the store and download, and it has everything pre-configured for you. And then if you need to make further modifications or want to add additional screens or functions, you can make those adjustments as well. So you do not have to use field service management mobile if you don't need it. That's an optional plugin.
Yes, and just to add to that, it really just depends on your priority for a mobile rollout, right? If your priority is getting mobile out into the hands of all your employees, I think that, and giving them that employee experience. So things from your service portal, give them access to request, rhythms and approvals and things like that. Then you're likely going to start with the out of the box now mobile app, right? But if your priority is more on how do I get my mobile app out to my agents who use agent workspace, but they need mobile access, then you're going to start looking into, things like ITSM incidents, field service task. Maybe you have CSM related use cases. Definitely check out the out of the box experiences and see what's out available. And then you're going to start considering, all right, what are my gaps from those business unit apps? And how do I use App Builder to fill in those gaps? So that is the recommended course. Okay.
And there is one more question in the chat about mobile branding. Does mobile branding have to be requested through our production instance? Mobile branding or mobile publishing, as we call it, but it's really that branding element, is a for fee add-on. So if you do want it, it does have to be requested. So you would go through the process of requesting that through whoever your salesperson is, and then they would get that added on. It is a store app, so you can see it. You just can't add it into your instance. The theming portion of mobile publishing, so the ability to customize the colors and whatnot, is part of mobile built in, and that does not require a fee. So it really depends on which elements of mobile publishing that you need, but definitely the branding part where you have your own icon and kind of splash page, those would need to be requested, and that store app would need to be added to your production instance.
There is one more question from the Q&A. I think just to clarify, there is a question about can we add email or any other record details to this search screen on the input form screen? So similar to how we enabled search for parent, I think they wanted more options to be able to display for under assigned to, like, are we able to display the email here or any other field that's related to the user? The answer to that is no, but I think that's actually a really great enhancement idea. And I would recommend for you to share that feedback with us in our idea portal. We'll definitely take a closer look because you're not the first person to ask for that.
There is a question on when mobile branding will be available for GCC instances, and I don't know, and I don't have any information on that. I don't know if David, you have any information on that, but
I would follow up with your account team, and then they'll definitely bring in the right folks to help answer that. Okay. But if that wraps up all of our questions for today, just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And if you did find this session helpful, please let us know in our post-session survey. There's going to be a couple of questions asking you what other topics you'd like us to explore in the future. So if you want us to dive deeper into different inputs, like one of the questions earlier, definitely let us know in that survey. Okay. But with all that said, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks, in which we'll cover navigation functions, the last of our actions, in next week's session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.